Good day and welcome to another edition of One-on-One with Swope Health. I am your host, Eric Wesson. Thanks so much for joining us today. Well, what has gone on in Kansas City for the past year? Joining us today is Mayor Quinton Lucas, and we're going to recap the year, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the not so ugly, but looks good enough anyway.
That's right. That's right.
Mayor, how you doing?
You know, I'm doing all right. Good to talk to you again, Eric. We've been having these chats about 10 years or so I've seen a lot of things change. Some problems stay the same, but excited to talk about what's ahead.
So let's work the year backwards.
Right.
So come out, people want to separate Kansas City from Jackson County.
Right.
And that's going to accomplish exactly what? And you're not in support of that, are you?
I am not in support of it. And don't get me wrong, I got my differences sometimes with the county, how county operations go. I think all of us, what's being mistaken by some of my peers who are pushing this, is that people who live in the core of Kansas City had issues with property taxes, have had issues with a lot of the things that were behind the recall of the county executive in November. So we all want stronger governance. We all want strong elected officials. And I don't think that has a line whether you're in Blue Springs or whether you're on Benton. So, for me, this is really not trying to accomplish anything. All it would do if it passed, A, you'd have to pay for another election. B, what? You would create a new Kansas City Jackson County Prosecutor's Office and Independence Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. You would double everything. You would add bureaucracy. You might make it tougher for operations. It doesn't make sense. And what I would say is if you're unhappy with how things are going, something I did years ago, run for office, win an election, organize. We have seen a lot of conservatives who are behind the recall. They won 85-15. So that tells me if you got the right ideas, you can win.
Mm-hmm. And the representative that's doing it is in Sugar Creek?
Right. And, I saw that too, and I don't know the gentleman. I look forward to getting a chance to meet him at some point. But, what I would say, and I'm hearing that the House Speaker, John Patterson, at Lee's Summit, is a supporter. What I would encourage them is recruit somebody good to run for county executive, right? Which at least currently right now is kind of wide open. Recruit people to run for the county legislature. I mean, there are ways you can make a difference without this kind of showy thing. And I'll even say for Kansas City, does this mean that we would now be in Kansas City, Jackson County, Clay County, Platte County, all of that? It is already inefficient enough. Then you got your silo of the Board of Police Commissioners. You've got so much going on. How do you split up the combat tax? How do you split up all these other types of things where we've had money for years? This is not a good idea. You see it in St. Louis, where the city and the county have been separated for 150 years, and I don't think it's helping either one of them.
No.
So this is an idea that, may be provocative, may be interesting, but I don't think one that helps anybody in Jackson County.
Okay, so recent resolution and things that's going before the council, gas station drugs. Tell us about that.
So the Director of Public Safety in my office, Lace Klein, her predecessor was Melissa Johnson. I've been blessed with some wonderful women who are helping run those efforts. Let's just be real. You and I have been talking about 35th and Prospect for a while. We have been talking about a lot of issues around gas stations. I know Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Curls talk about it along the Bannister and Blue Ridge corridor all the time. At too many filling stations and convenience stores, you can get things that are basically drugs, right? And you have people strung out all day. Some of them got classic drinking problems, don't get me wrong, but you are seeing a lot of these issues. So this actually comes from more of a public safety perspective. In the congregations you have around, the types of things that people are getting in there. From the public health perspective, you see that you have more people that are getting into a life of dependency, getting into deep addiction, a lot of them having trouble getting themselves off of these, this being a gateway into further addiction. That's where it comes from. I'm not trying to be the hall monitor. I'm not trying to say you can't do a lot of other things. I will say this, though. Missouri has legalized cannabis. It can be obtained through lawful regulated means in the state. The other things are lawful and regulated. You got people right now going in to get bottles of pills where we don't even really know what's in it, what the compound is, all those steps. So I think it needs to change. Of course, in the last week since we've introduced it, we are hearing from every lobbyist, from here to Jefferson City about all the different things that are an issue. Here's my jam. Look, I know we can't ban it everywhere. So if it means that after this passes, you get in KCK, Raytown, what have you, okay. But I deal with a public safety issue. I've heard from people who said, I'm tired of looking at what's going on Prospect. I'm tired of looking at what are some of these challenges again and again. And we can have the police come by all the time, shoo somebody away, they're coming back, shoo them away, come back. And we need to look at what's happening sometimes in the institutions themselves, why people aren't congregating, the steps we can take. This is one little step, I think, in that direction.
And what about the liquor stores? Because I get a lot of comments now that you're doing it with the gas stations. The liquor stores have the same issues.
I think a few things on liquor stores. We have more regulatory tools with liquor stores. Gas stations, we still regulate, like their main purpose is trying to sell gas or other conveniences. At least through liquor stores, we already have regulated industries that's in there looking at how much they're selling by percentage. You can only do so much liquor compared to everything else. But I don't say that's outside the realm of possibility that we look to regulate there too, that we are looking to see ways and steps that we can take to make sure that we are, I think, addressing these more broadly. And that's something that I think we're going to look to address too.
The other thing, okay, let's look at, you've had a lot of groundbreaking for housing, and I know you've said that your legacy would be housing. So how's that looking? And there's always that conversation about affordable.
Right.
What does affordable housing look like? Because as a developer, each unit costs me so much to make, and that's where I break even. I got to pay the bank. What is affordable?
I think there's been a lot of drama around what the cap on affordable is. A few years ago, it was about a little under $1,200. What I would say is this. We are building thousands of units, broke ground on another one on the historic Northeast just a few weeks before. We were off of 22nd and Olive. A lot of these are $400, $500, $600 a month. We are doing the sorts of things that people can get into. The reason that we can't build all of them that way is because when you're building that financial stack, and you understand this, and many do, you got to get low-income housing tax credits. You got to have a lender that's working with you. You need state, federal, CDBG, everything under the sun. So this is, I will admit, a balanced approach. There are going to be some units that are on the end that are $400 or $500. There'll be others that are more to $1,000. We haven't really seen the $1,100 to $1,200 level that much lately, particularly with a lot of our development in the 3rd and 5th districts, some on the eastern part of the 4th district. So we are building lots of accessible, is what I like to say, housing for people at all income levels. But I will tell you this, and I say this as somebody who lived in a building at the corner of 19th and Paseo for about 12 years that had mixed income housing. We have got to have mixed income housing.
Right.
You can't just have, I won't mock anything in Kansas City's past, you can't just have Cabrini Green and then be surprised when you're dealing with who knows what, because you centralize poverty. I talk a lot to the councilwomen from the 3rd district in particular about you can't just center everything in one spot of the city. Right. And then say, oh, go figure, we got some issues.
Right.
I am proud that we are building mixed income housing. So does that mean in some of our residences, yeah, we're going to have an $1,100 unit next to $500 units, next to some $800 units. That is better for our community long term. We have heard that particularly from working class Black professionals in our city who say, I want to be able to live in the city, but I also want to live in something quality. And so I think that this is a strong positive change for Kansas City. When I ran for mayor a long time ago, my view was, I'm tired of the set-asides. I'm tired of all the other dramas that we get from this. And I think that, frankly, we do need to see that change long term.
And, even with mixed income, if you go and you focus low income or affordable, you got to have mixed income to attract grocery stores, to attract other items that people need in the community. And if you don't have it, then you wind up with gas stations being considered grocery stores because they sell a package of bologna and some bread and mustard and mayonnaise.
Right. I mean, I know we'll probably get to the Linwood grocery store later, but, there are many issues. Probably the biggest relates to having enough households of means to be able to support something, and the fact that, even years ago, and I regret we didn't succeed on it. You probably heard about it too. I remember Pastor Lindsay, a lot of others are saying, how can we do redevelopment on the northwest corner, 31st and Prospect? We need to get residential in there. We need to get more housing development there. We need to get more infill on the single family housing stock. That's how you build sustainable investments long term that nobody's being asked to subsidize. And frankly, you're not asking the owner themselves to basically give away a whole bunch of free product every month. That's how you change communities, and that's the work that I think we're doing. We just need to do more of it. I'll make this other point. When I was younger, when we were all younger, Mayor Kay Barnes staked her legacy, and I think there's been much success on it, on repopulating downtown. Mm-hmm. We need to repopulate the urban core.
Right.
And I'm not just saying the east side, right? Midtown, but we need to repopulate the urban core long term to support the services, frankly, the funding that we need. That should be a clear position of Kansas City, and I'm glad at least we're starting to do some of it.
Do you think that city council should have more oversight of the fire department? The fire department I've been writing about the fire department for 19 years.
Yep.
And it's the same headlines, the same problems exist there. And I'm thinking maybe if it was more oversight by the city council, things would be different. And I'm saying this, in fact, that, we just got 3 candidates for fire chief, all white males. How do we do this? The lawsuits, the morale within the fire department. How do we change that?
I think the first thing we do need is more accountability. As you know, I'm a strong local control of the police person. Mm-hmm. But something that the police union, the FOP, sometimes points out, they'll look at the newspaper too, seem like y'all ain't got local control of your fire department either.
Right.
And, I think that we have made a lot of concessions in the union contracts over the years. Mm-hmm. I think we have made a lot of concessions that have made it very challenging to hold people accountable in things that just make common sense. I won't get too deep in the legal weeds, but I will note that, and this has been fairly public, we had a situation where a firefighter drove into a building and some people, killing 3 people, facing criminal charges, coming up with a plea deal with the Jackson County prosecutor, then Gene Peters Baker, and then coming back and expecting his job back, like everything's all honky-dory.
Right.
City Council has several different times said, no, that's not the way it's going to be. We can continue to be in legal dispute with the fire union. And I think we see that in grievance after grievance, where we say, look, we're not going to stand for race discrimination, for sexual harassment, for reckless homicide, or whatever you call that offense. We need better accountability. So I think part of it is going to be, and I've been somebody who supported them getting paid. Right, we got a whole bunch of firefighters making over $300,000 a year. We are very supportive of them. You got to have some accountability. And I talk to firefighters too, many of whom are saying, yeah, we don't want this sort of challenge. We don't want to deal with somebody acting a fool, committing a crime, doing any number of the steps. So I think this is going to be something that is an ongoing test. I don't know if I actually will say this. I think in the next mayoral race, you will probably have some clear lines between folks who say, yeah, you can be very supportive of firemen and women, but you need to make sure that somebody's being held accountable when they act wrong. That's something I think has been lacking. I think in our contracts, we need to do a better job of ensuring that space.
So does that mean that there should be more oversight, or does the union have too much authority?
I think the answer to your question on both of them is yes. I think there needs to be more oversight, more accountability. I don't know if City Council hears about the issues enough in terms of what's happening at the fire department. I think that the other step that we'll have is that I'll say this. I think long term the union needs to figure out who they're fighting for and what they're fighting for. The city has been very good to them in regards to
Absolutely.
Pay, benefits, all of that. The only reason we've had any issues of late, and look, maybe in the 1970s and 1980s you could get away with some stuff. You can't be sexually harassing people anymore. We can't have nooses in fire stations anymore. Shouldn't have been happening back then.
Right.
But it's 2025, about to be 2026. What we cannot do is say that we're going to look the other way, or somebody gets off of like a 1-day timeout for perpetuating racism, sexism. I mean, I read the stories like you do. I read your stories, and it's not right. And so I think we do need to make sure there's a way that we can very fairly say, y'all got to have clearer discipline lines. It needs to be, I think, stronger. And frankly, we don't need to see a grievance every time somebody on city staff is trying to say, look, you can't get away with that.
Mm-hmm. And lawsuits, even when we come in City Hall lawsuits, you just got a new whistleblower lawsuit the other day. Is it the mentality within there? Is it the leadership? What needs to change in the area of City Hall? That's right there.
I think it's a balance. To go back to the fire point real quick, the thing that gets me sometimes, and look, there's some lawsuits that got a lot of attention this year, but when I look at where we actually get hit up on real costs, you've seen a $10 million payout at the fire department. You've seen a lot of water department stuff, but I'm gonna stay on fire for a minute. I mean, that's where a lot of it is. Manager, auditor, all of that's more one-off. You're gonna catch your employment suits that usually settle for 6 figures. Part of that's the cost of litigation. But I think that it is fair to suggest that with some of our larger departments, and I'm including fire in that, we need to find pathways to stronger accountability long term. And I think that ends up having an impact on the whole institution, because I'm a lawyer myself. You got some lawyers that just have a whole practice of suing Kansas City, right? I mean, that's their book of business. They already have the pleading written, just kind of like,
change the name
right.
on it.
They judge, it's going to be this, and this count. Y'all know I'm going to get through to a jury, so y'all better settle. I mean, we see a lot of that. I mean, there are a few things that I think we need to do in connection with it. One, address those large departments and the issues where we know there's a long-term concern. The second is, I think, have more clear channels of accountability earlier. One of the reasons, particularly on the administrative side, when you see lawsuits, is nobody keeps track of anything. And so, you got folks sometimes that are trying to finally penalize somebody after 20 years when they didn't get a performance review. And you got to have clear pathways of, this is what you're doing right, this is what you're doing wrong. This is where I have an issue, this is where I don't. I think as much of anything, it's not that you got everybody just going crazy and mistreating everybody, but in a lot of cases, you have nobody keeping track of how performance has been, of what our standards will be, if people need to actually show up in the building, which is a fallout of the post-COVID era when we had people working from home, and you still got some departments where people are working from home 5 years later.
Wow.
You need to get all of that addressed. And so I think there is real pressure on the city manager and our other charter appointees, the auditor and the clerk, to make sure that they're being clear about that too.
Linwood Shopping Center, Sunfresh, closed, food desert in that area for almost a decade, or a little bit more than a decade, in that 3 or 4 block radius. How do we bring another grocery store in there and we haven't solved the root problem, and that is the mentality around outside hanging out, loitering. I listened to some of the neighborhood leaders say the problem's not solved as far as 31st Street. They just moved over into the neighborhoods now. So instead of being on 31st and Prospect, they're on 31st and Wabash. They're on 31st and Garfield. They're in those areas. So the problem's not solved. It just moved somewhere else. So how do we bring another grocery store in there and we haven't solved the root problem?
I think it's a balance, right? Because the question is, how long does it take you to solve the root problem? I believe in, optimism, but I'm also a realist. We will likely open up a new jail facility in 6-7 months. I don't think, however, that's going to solve the entirety of the problem, because at least for those of us who are from the city, back when we had a jail, you still had people acting a fool in certain parts of the city. Maybe new to some new neighborhoods in Kansas City, but I grew up in Kansas City that still had some issues. And so I think we need to continue to try to build development activity more commerce, particularly at 31st and Prospect. I do, however, think that we need more aggressive, and let me choose a different word because I'm not saying aggressive policing. But we need
aggressive
policing.
Policing is good.
But we need policing, and I'm gonna try to be as fair as I can. It shouldn't have to be, and you were part of this from the media side, and the community was. When it's a hot day, I think August of 24, and people basically they're begging the police chief, hey, can we get some policing?
Right.
And then they say, well, we'll come if you call 911 and all of that. Part of me says, no, we want to see your visibility. We want to see your regular patrolling. We want to, it's everything doesn't. If there's been a trend in policing that's changed a lot since I was a kid. Even then, they used to just drive through more. Mm-hmm. Now they're kind of like, well, we'll give you a special operation once every 2 months, and we'll bring 30 people in, and they'll arrest everybody, even if they just sit around. And you need to do something that is that cleaner balance. Mm-hmm. And I know we got the Can Center there, but I just think you need to see more patrol cars coming through. If there's space and opportunity for a foot beat every now and then, somebody getting outside the car. But you need to understand that there's an ecosystem of public safety. And it can't just be, you got an armed guard when you walk in the store. Somebody who is turning tricks on the corner, doing whatever drug, saying whatever thing, needs to know that, every now and then they're going to stop and talk to you. Mm-hmm. Back to when I was a kid, Lord knows when you were one, right? If there was maybe it wasn't all good, but if there was more than a congregation, about 5 to 10 of us on a corner, right?
Yeah.
The policeman's rolling down his window and being like, what y'all up to?
Yeah.
And I think there is a way to do that constitutionally, respectfully for a neighborhood, but also one where folks know, you can't just stay here all day and shout at people, do whatever, steal some stuff, and be all good.
And J.J. Harris used to be the officer in our area. He would stop. Eric, I'm going to tell your mama. Dale, where's your mom at? Dale, Cedric,
right.
Rainey, where your mom at? I know she don't want y'all hanging out here on the corner.
Right.
And they used to keep notebooks, and they pull a notebook out and write your name down, so they were familiar with who you were. Yeah. But I think my issue with it is we've been talking about the same thing in that area for almost 3 years that I can think of off the top of my head. But here's the thing that's disturbing. The police have come up and you guys put together an ordinance for loitering.
Yep.
And then the police said, well, we think this ordinance is unconstitutional because we'll be doing such and such. But now when the ordinance was being drafted and written up, you all were at the table. Why didn't y'all work out these things now to say, rather than say, we're going to be kind of hands off on this because we don't think it's legal?
People always ask me about state versus local control, and conservatives try to gotcha me on what would you do differently if we had local control. Step one is they would enforce all the ordinances. Because here's my thing about policing in Kansas City, right? With the way we are set up, City Council can't go out and enforce its own ordinances. We can't, I'd love to create my own police force and they can make sure, to your point, that we got the officer who's in the community, who's doing that step, who's going through all of that. Instead, we got to introduce something. And to your point, because they said we don't have the tools. I don't know if I actually believe that, but nonetheless, all right, because I could have sworn in 1995, y'all had the tool to break up whatever this group was doing. But okay, assuming you don't have it, right, then we went. You're absolutely right. Lace Klein spent probably half a summer. I barely got to talk to her, right, working on this, meeting with everybody, every stakeholder. You get the community in, test it out at the summit. You got some people who are saying this is crazy and too conservative, others saying whatever. You get it passed. Mm-hmm. And then later they get to basically have, I don't even know who at the department gets to make the choice on who vetoes it. I mean, that's an amazing power. For me to get some struck out, I got to go to the Missouri Supreme Court, go through all these steps, years of litigation, still may lose.
Right.
Whereas on that, they just kind of say, no, that doesn't, we read it again, doesn't work. Not a tool that works. Look, the way I would see it, if I ruled the world, which they ain't letting me do, but if I did, I'd say enforce the ordinance till some judge strikes it down.
Exactly.
And I'm like, if Judge Peterson in municipal court says, all right, this is not constitutional, all right, I'm going to go back to the drawing board. She ain't done that.
Right.
She hasn't had the opportunity to do that. That's what I say. You go through those steps and you see, in much the same way, this is what gets me sometimes with the department, right? Part of, and I'm not trying to, get in a hornet's nest, but, they have other areas. They had I think a pre-crime strike force that has led to a few officer-involved shootings that existed, that maybe had some constitutional questionability, that existed fine, and they were doing it and all of that. What disappoints me sometimes, it seems like when we're doing something, we, the council, or we, even the community, who are saying, all right, we'll give you this tool. They're like, no, not what we about. Whereas if it relates to drone technology, which I support, some of these other things that have big questions with Fourth Amendment issues, it's all good.
So if you could go back to January 1, 2025, and you had a crystal ball, what would you have done different for the remainder of the year?
Man, I would have fixed up the Chiefs' O-line before the Super Bowl, man. It's, but
it's too early. It's too early.
Man, it's been an interesting year since then.
I don't know what I'm going to do in January.
Ain't that the truth? Been 7 straight AFC Championships games, probably 10 years since we've been not been in the playoffs or something.
Well, we had something to do in January. Now
I'm telling you, though, they're going to be less mad at me at SCLC because all of Martin Luther King Day stuff, every year, people have been trying to schedule around the Chiefs all these years.
Exactly. Exactly.
If I had a crystal ball, I would probably, man, and there was a lot happened. Would have tried to find a way to resolve some of our longer term issues a little faster. Linwood Shopping Center, we replaced a city manager. We, had a few other, obviously, Chiefs Royal Stadium issues. I think probably the hardest thing in life sometimes, whether it's your job, politics, marriages for some people, but you're going to have a good one. It is knowing when you need to just make a decision and move on. Mm-hmm. And I think that the city, finds itself sometimes kind of trapped in a long-term debate and discussion and what are we going to do and all this and that. And the public, even on Linwood Shopping Center, I'll use that as an example. You're going to put more money in or you're not. If you're not, say it. Say it. Say this is what your step is what it's going to be. Zero fare transit, ATA. There were a lot of those things that have been longer-term debates that I would have preferred being a little quicker on. And in some ways, and as you know, I was on city council before I was in this position. I will give credit to Sly James on this. Sly liked to fight. Mm-hmm. Sly had a lot more 7-6 votes than my era has had. In some ways, I think that's a positive for my era. But they made decisions. You'd show up at city council, there'd be some fireworks, we'd have our fight, you keep it moving. And I think maybe sometimes we could stand to be a bit more expedient on that.
Okay, so 2 more things. Crime, of course, we got to talk about that. They were running victory laps about the decline in non-fatal shootings, homicide. But what are they comparing those to? And are they reporting these things accurately? Because this is what I found interesting, and I wrote about this as well. Right after they came out with the budget request for an increase, suddenly we've got remarkable outcomes in crime in Kansas City. But it still looks like things are the same. So if you're talking about, we need more officers, we need this and that, and you have these officers and have all of this stuff, how are you not meeting your goals?
Yeah, I think.
How are you meeting them if you don't have the right number of officers to do
right,
it?
Right. Let me say this about crime, and I'm positive on some of our good trends. I would put a lot of credit actually on the Save KC program. You've had the Jackson County prosecutor working with it. You've had a lot of other community organizations, and KCPD has contributed to that as well. But the budget request, a 20% increase, when the city's talking about we need to find $100 million in savings from the general fund. The budget,
part of that $100 million comes from their increase in salary, because now they get a bigger part of the city's budget.
Right. The 20% increase request is not realistic. It is just, in all my years here, I'm like that. I saw that. And I said, I believe a 20% increase for them is $50 million.
Right. So
in essence, we need to, because if everybody else is, if we're trying to cut $100 million from the general fund, that would mean they would take a cut. If it's 25%, which they went to Jeff City to fight for in a public statewide ballot, that means they probably be down $25 million. Mm-hmm. So what this actually means is they are looking for $50 million more. We're still going to have to cut $100 million. So we're going to have to find a way to cut $150 million from everybody else if they get their way. I mean, I think that we need to be real about where there is progress and where perhaps there isn't. Non-fatal shootings, I think we can be proud of trends. I think there's some steps there in the right direction. Car break-ins, a lot of the other theft offenses, quality of life offenses, I think people continue to see a lot of, and that continues to be a problem. And unfortunately, a lot of those people who are starting there are moving up the hierarchy. Right. And that's how you get back to a murder problem 5-10 years down the line, because you didn't enforce earlier. Some of that's going to be more officers. I think a lot more of that is how we deploy. As I said before, and thank you for giving me the time to say it, you know, you used to have patrol. I think Forte spent some time trying to get to this, which was every officer is a community officer. You got more people who are patrolling the streets. You got more people looking. It isn't just these large teams, whether it's TAC, which is like our SWAT team, or whatever else. Last year on the budget, I asked the police chief, I said, you got about a $28 million budget for special ops. And that's more than at least one of our patrol division budgets. What are all the special operations people? And it's, you know, the folks who do the different things. It's a traffic group that we have working ins and outs, i.e. escorting teams and others out of Arrowhead Stadium sometimes. And I'm like, that's cool for them. Mm-hmm. But we still got streets to patrol. Mm-hmm. We have got to get back to more patrolling, expanding the patrol division itself, making sure that people see officers more, making sure you get a faster response to your 911 call. Street racing is another example. Sure, every few months they'll post about a big street racing operation that took 50 officers and half a helicopter and all. Cool. But can y'all actually what about next weekend?
Right.
Right? When they tearing up Waldo, Blue Ridge, wherever, I need a few officers then, and they tell me, well, you don't have enough. I'm like, then do what you can, right? Because one thing I will say, I ain't gonna get in another snow fight. There was a lot of this on Facebook. Part of the reason I stand up for city employees, I meet a whole lot of primarily brothers that we throw out on a snowplow and say, you got to work mandatory overtime. Your shift's going to be 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Do your best. And they go out and do their best, right? What I want to hear more often is fewer excuses and more, hey, you need to get out there. You need to just do your best.
And that's not what we're getting. We're getting a lot of excuses. And we got new uniforms coming down the pipe. That's really going to make us feel safer, knowing that we spent, $10 million, $15 million on new uniforms for the police department. I feel safe already. I'm going to go home and take all my locks off the door.
It's,
Turn my ADT alarm off.
You know, I mean, it's an interesting, police budgets are funny, man.
Like, they're ridiculous.
Yeah, ridiculous. Yeah. It's because it's one of those things of look, 911 still got issues.
911 got issues.
And I just thought, when that song 911 is a joke come out? 91? 92? We 33 years on in KC, and that infuriates me. That you still got people that, and nice people will just say, like, I know y'all busy. I know it's a big city, but I called 911, I waited 3-4 minutes.
They tell you, hold on a minute.
Right.
I'm bleeding to death.
Wow.
Okay, one last question.
Yes, sir.
So is the decrease in the non-fatal shootings, is that because people aren't reporting them, or is that because the police officers now have those life-saving tactics that they can use, like tourniquets and things like that? So is that why there's a decrease, because they're using those, applying them, or because the mentality here seems about the same?
I think that we have a lot of folks on the streets that are still operating the same way. Obviously, they're still carrying But I will say, I think that what we have done is been able to address a lot of the retaliation back and forth. For those who don't know crime in America right now, and I don't pretend to know everything about it, but you got a lot of factions. We had a murder in Westport a few years back where they were waiting for the dude, and he got out of jail over in Kansas. Came out to Westport, whatever, and so you are seeing a lot more intervention there. You're seeing a lot more arrests there. That is a very positive trend for us. And so I think that part of it is good. I think our hospitals are good. But I like to believe that, we're being a little more aggressive. And this is where I commend our prosecutor, Melissa Johnson, and, how she says, fix your life or I'm going to fix it for you. I think you are seeing good charges where we need them, and I commend that, and I hope we continue.
But we don't have a lot of charges with the homicides. Even though the police data says one thing, it's confusing and I think it's really misleading. They solving 73% of homicides. If that were the case, it would be every police department in the country would be lined up and down locusts trying to figure out how they're solving 73% of them.
It's interesting and I'm not one of those conspiracy theorists, but it's interesting, how that data is calculated. And they tell me every year, because when I first became mayor, I was like, but you still got this percentage unsolved. They're like, no, we're like the best in the country. And this isn't me bagging on anybody. God bless our rank and file officers. I want to get them paid too. But I think you have said it. There is occasionally... Well, I'm gonna let your writing speak for itself. Your headlines with milk cartons and all that, but accountability is something important for all of us.
Mayor Lucas, thanks so much for joining us. We covered a lot of it.
Yes, sir.
It was so much to happen this year. I didn't think we'd get it all in 30 minutes, and we've been over anyway. But my engineer doesn't mind. Appreciate you. Looking forward to a productive year next year as you see the end of the finish line. And if they keep these maps the same, you'll be running against Mark Alford.
I'll announce it on your show, man.
Oh, homelessness.
Is it illegal to be homeless? In Kansas City, it is not. In Kansas City, Missouri, it's not. I've read about what's happening in Wyandotte County.
They got a heck of a problem over there. How many people from Wyandotte County do we get over here in Kansas City in the shelters? Because they don't have any over there.
Well, that's been my Kansas problem for years, that we invest in quite a bit. A lot of the resources and the services are over here. And so I know people tell me, well, your people go everywhere else. Well, we get people because we actually fund it. And we fund those services and we feed lots of people, whether it be from the public side or the nonprofits. And so for us, no, it's not illegal to be homeless. I think status, crimes, and offenses are offensive themselves to the Constitution. We need to make sure we find more ways to have people find shelter. I don't think you can just start an encampment anywhere. You can't pitch a tent on my property or yours. That being said, I think that there are ways you try to get people where they need to be rather than just arresting them again and again. I'll give one example. Any of us who have seen the crime of prostitution in our community, you ever talk to any of them, you realize they've been arrested about 100, 200, 300 times. After a while, if you're smart, that tells you, all right, in most situations, young woman needs to find some way to get the resources and support she needs. Criminalizing homelessness is just the same level of head against the wall. You're just, all right, you're going to give somebody a warm place to sleep and some meals and all of that? Most of them will take that deal. And so it is, how do we get people into low barrier shelter opportunities? How do you get them into services? How do you move them out of unsafe environments, including some encampments in our city? But I think that's the way you do it rather than just the criminalization approach.
I agree. Thanks so much for joining us today. And as always, I have the greatest viewing audience in the world. Until next time, remember, tough times don't last, tough people do. Until next time, peace.